Welcome to Divorced from Reality with Johnny Bardine.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Divorced from Reality with Johnny Bardine. I'm Matt Skye. Johnny is a dedicated attorney who has been serving the Tampa Bay community for over a decade. With a mission to help individuals and families through their most challenging times, Johnny provides compassionate, fierce advocacy in divorce, foreclosure, personal injury, and probate matters. Johnny, thanks for joining us.
Good to be back. Thank you so much, Matt.
Let's get into the macros of divorce. Can you tell us why it's crucial to focus on mental health during the divorce process?
As I've said in the first couple episodes, better if you're starting from in a strong position with regard to your mental health, and then you're going to make better decisions and you're going to get better outcomes. So the answer with those sort of legal strategies is that we need everyone as healthy as they can be so they can make better decisions for their own best interest. And then secondly, it's like look we're now embarking upon a process that has a lot of pitfalls for you along the way. And it's only a short period of time. And so we need to do our best to get through that period of time and set you up for success moving forward, because even though this divorce might last a year, you still have to live with the results of it for the rest of your life.
You mentioned pitfalls. What are some of those common pitfalls people encounter?
Reacting from emotion is a big part of it. Making decisions based on feeling guilty about what they've done in the past in a way that I don't think is always very helpful for them. And so what happens is that people end up being reactionary, even instead of sort of forward thinking about their decisions.
Any other specific mental health challenges that are common?
It's a process that's predicated on instilling a sense of self-doubt that can sort of breed serious anxiety and depression. And so what we need to look for is that, or what we need to remind ourselves of, is that we're not defined by our mistakes or our past, but we are defined by how we respond to it. And we're not defined by how this lawyer, that ex-wife, or this judge thinks about us. That's not who we are. And so those are the things that I talk to my clients about. It's like, look, you need to be who you are, and you need to know who you are. And there are some issues about who you are, and we can work together to fix it. But we're not going to have our actions defined by what other people think about us.
Sometimes I hear about this. Is there something to the idea that we're not defined by our worst moment, but you have to take the totality of who we are into account too?
Yeah. I think that's the whole thing. Whether you're going through a divorce or not, I mean, you're always going to have detractors who are going to point to that thing you did in the past and say that's who you are. That isn't who you are. We're all defined by the sum of our history and our commitment to making tomorrow better than today.
Let's get into some of the more granular aspects of mental health. What are the practices you recommend for people when protecting mental health during a divorce?
Right. Therapy, early and often. And I talk about whether it's the simplest real estate transaction or a contentious divorce, I talk to my clients about the importance of mental health right off the bat. And it's because of who I am and my disposition, people are been trying to use me in that regard, but I don't have any of the experience or education to help them. So I think doing the work that's necessary to protect your mental health as early as possible in the process is going to be beneficial, because there are a lot of things that I can help fix the legal issue, but there are a lot of issues that I can't fix, and that's one of them.
What do you say to a client who may be reluctant to go to therapy?
Everyone can choose about how they want to move forward and the decisions they want to make. Right. So I don't force anyone to do it. I don't impose any ultimatums, but I can tell them that, look, I personally have been through some difficult challenges legally in my own divorce, and I benefited greatly from bolstering the legal help I was getting with some mental health care. And so to the extent that it matters, what your lawyer's saying, take it from me, that I not only am I telling you this as a lawyer, but as someone who's been through this process.
And that's huge, that you can have that empathy and understanding.
Empathy is often possible because you've been through that yourself and you've been in some other people's shoes. And so I don't overshare about some of the things I've been through, but it's important to know that other people have been through the things that you've been through.
Absolutely. No, that in and of itself, I'm sure provides a high level of comfort. I was going to ask, when you are suggesting therapy. A therapy-client relationship is a very intimate one. What are the qualities you look for in a good therapist or suggest clients look for when finding that match?
So everyone's different. And so I think like choosing a divorce attorney, it's a very individual decision for who your therapist is. And so I've been lucky enough over the years to sort of build a network of mental health professionals who have a lot of different personality types. And so I can sort of think about my client in the context of those and try to match them accordingly. But always you want someone who's going to be able to listen to you without judgment, who's going to give you some homework to work on between sessions, and who are in familiar enough in my field, they're going to talk to you about your issues in a way that would be beneficial to you in the legal process.
And how frequent are sessions usually? I'm sure it spans a lot, but is it usually, I guess, weekly or bi-weekly or monthly?
Yeah, so I recommend that clients start out with weekly sessions, and if they progress well enough, then I would say bi-weekly.
Just to build that momentum.
Yeah, and then sort of where people land is probably twice a month.
Okay. And beyond the therapy side, how do people build a strong support network, emotional support network?
When people embark in the process in family law cases, I think there's an innate sense of embarrassment to that they don't want to share what's going on with them, or they're hesitant to reveal details. But I find that my clients' families and friends have been very supportive if my clients have taken the steps to be communicative and open about what they're going through. So I think that's the part about this that I would tell people is like, you'll be surprised about how your family and friends show up for you if you tell them that you need them.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes we keep it to ourselves and we're surprised how supportive people actually are. When you're working alongside legal health professionals, how closely do you work in tandem with them? What's that process look like?
As you all know, the counselor and the patient have a privilege. So I need to get everyone's permission and get the requisite waivers and authorizations signed. But then after that, I really do my best to sort of check in with everyone's mental health as we move through the process. And so I will, if I've got the authorization, schedule regular meetings with a therapist to check in about that. And then that will inform the way that I talk to my client or maybe our legal strategy moving forward.
And do you have any examples where this has made a big difference, this kind of close collaboration?
Yeah, I think so. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I had a client whose mental health issues really precipitated the dissolution. That was the reason for the separation. And prior to meeting me or signing up for me as a client in the divorce, he started attending regular counseling sessions. He has 2 therapists on the job. And the result of that is that I was able to this week reduce into writing an agreement in which my client committed to seeing some mental health therapists and we're hopeful has paved the way to a reconciliation with his wife. And I think I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think the reason for that was his wife's being cautiously impressed with his commitment to working on himself and improving things.
How much of an impact does that make when a spouse sees that the other spouse is making that commitment?
All these cases are different, right? And they're multifaceted, and they've got layers, and they've got generational layers. I mean, these issues sometimes started in motion two decades before they walk into my office, right? So I'm hesitant to generalize, but to the extent that the issues between the parties are communication or behavioral issues and stuff like that, I think that is really important for the other spouse to see their partner make an effort to improve their situation.
If we can, just a little bit, we talked a little bit about this off camera, but can you detail for us the process of when to be sort of the pit bull and then when to be a more empathetic, supportive person? How do you balance those two worlds?
Right. Well, that balance is really important. I think that's something that we strive to do really well in our office, because as we're saying off camera, like sometimes you meet a lawyer who's, level 11 right away, like hyper aggressive, wants to litigate everything. And you're like, what is going on with you? And then sometimes you'll meet a lawyer who is hyper docile or very passive. And you're like, well, that's not very good advocacy either. So what I think is really an important strategy in these cases, and something that we try to employ, is to do both simultaneously. So we're always trying to resolve it in a conciliatory way, because you have more control over it, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be quicker, all those reasons. But no one ever does anything until they have to do it. And so, for example, if we have a mediation coming up where I want to resolve something, after the mediation, I'll schedule a deposition or a hearing on a motion or something like that, because I think everyone needs to understand what's at stake here, that the outcomes are unpredictable, process is expensive, the cost of litigating it might be more expensive than the cost of resolving it, and everyone needs to understand their relative exposure in these processes. So I think it's really important to do both. You need to move forward in the litigation, but you always need to try to settle it, because that's going to be ultimately what's best for everyone.
Now, one advantage your clients have working with you is that you're going to handle the logistics, the legal complexities. You can advise them to be focused on their own health. What kind of mindfulness practices contribute to better mental health during these proceedings?
Well, jokingly, I'm like, all right, before you pick up the phone to call me, take a few deep breaths.
That's step one.
Step one, take a few deep breaths, meditate a bit. And that's an important part of it, and then thinking about what is necessary, what is something that's just simply upsets you, and what is something that has some legal import that we need to address in the divorce. So that decision-making is key, and it's borne out by sort of some mindfulness exercises, some self-care, some journaling, and things like that. So I think clients learning to distinguish between what is something they need to internalize and process and something that I can help with is an important part of it.
So the divorce itself is one thing, but how can clients prevent long-term mental health difficulties resulting from a divorce? It can be very traumatic for so many.
No one can prevent it totally, right? And the P in PTSD stands for post. So you often don't know that that's happening to you until it's already happened, right? So what I tell my clients is like, we can't predict, and you can't help whether you have some long-term mental health issue from this. But what you can do is what you can do right now, which is be aware that that's a possibility, get yourself into some therapy and counseling right away, and just do your best to mitigate what is going to be an unavoidably traumatic experience.
There's one very big dimension to this we have not explored yet, and that's the impact on children. How can parents protect their children's mental health during a divorce?
What do kids want? Right? They want two, if possible, loving parents, two safe homes. They want predictability and stability, and they want to know that the grown-ups in their lives are going to be looking out for them. What they don't want is some endless fight between their mom and their dad about this stuff. So it's very important early on for kids to be involved in that mental health process and get some help that they need, because they're often going to feel more comfortable talking to someone like that rather than one of their parents, because they're afraid of hurting one of their parents' feelings about it. And so what's absolutely critical is that the parents understand that these kids didn't sign up for this. All they want is to resolve this issue so they can go have fun with their friends or do well in school or have this or that hobby. What they don't want is to worry about where they're going to spend Christmas or what weekends are going to be with their parents. So you keep in mind that these kids just want the love of both parents and stability, and that everyone needs to be working toward those goals.
When it comes to that therapeutic side, do you tend to see that children have the same therapist as their parents, or should they have separate therapists? How does that work?
What I typically find is that both the parents will have their own individual counseling, and that they'll agree on the mental health therapist for their children, and then the children's therapist will start out with them, get down the road a little bit, and then seek to involve one or both parents in some family counseling.
So we addressed this a little bit in the last episode, but let's touch on this again. We're looking at the legal system at a macro level. Are there ways they can better accommodate people going through divorce, our legal system?
I firmly believe that people are doing the best they can with the resources they have. Right, that the people involved in this process are generally well-intentioned, both the judge and both the lawyers and the people who are going through it. I believe that. But what I think would be helpful is if the parents were ordered to go to some family counseling early on in this process, that it was a compulsory requirement. I think that would be really helpful to the end results of these cases.
So as we wrap up, do you have any final advice for individuals when it comes to maintaining their mental health during and then after a divorce?
So during the divorce, you've got to do what you can do to understand that you're not going to be defined by every daily occurrence in your divorce, right? That everything that happens doesn't require an immediate response, and that doesn't say anything about you or your character, your moral turpitude. That is just part of the process. So you have to understand that you're not identified by whatever anyone else is saying. Number one, that's what I can tell you during the divorce. After the divorce, you have to rely on the work that you did during the divorce and in preparation for this, so that when you're removed from that trauma, you're well positioned and well equipped in the best way you can to move forward in a productive way.
I have one last question. How can listeners find more resources or support as they deal with mental struggles during a divorce?
Well, yeah, I like to hold myself out as a resource like that, so you can find BardineLawFirm.com. I also think the SAMHSA website is a good way to get there, SAMSHA.com, to find some resources to move forward. So whether you hire me as your lawyer or not, I'm helpful. I want to be helpful as I can to people and their families, so reach out to me and we can sort it out in the right way.
I think that's a great point to wrap on. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to Divorced from Reality with Johnny Bardine. For more information or to connect with Johnny, visit BardineLawFirm.com. You can also find him on social media. Johnny, thanks for this discussion today.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.